I'm sorry, no, I shouldn't laugh. It's just, it was kind of funny. I mean, it was exactly like a cartoon. You know, when somebody falls off a cliff and they sort of go like, it was exactly like that. It was literally exactly like that. Which I guess makes sense because it's like, that's probably, I mean, where else would they get the idea for the cartoon, to make it sound like that? And I told that story at the funeral because I thought it was going to sort of bring some levity to the situation because I got to give the eulogy. So I said that exact thing. I was like, they don't. I had no idea that when somebody falls off a cliff, it sounds exactly like a cartoon, and they go like, and people really did not. It was a tough crowd, and then I said that too after that anecdote. I said, man, you guys are a tough crowd. This is worse than the Comedy Cellar on autism night, was what I said. And I thought that was a pretty good improv, for in the moment. I mean, I didn't have anything prepared other than that, so, and I know that sometimes people are really taken aback by the fact that I'm able to kind of see the humor. I see the humor in everything. I mean, I'm a comedian, but that's just sort of the way that I cope with things. And it's been such a long time since it happened, I mean, it's been almost like 3 weeks. That's a long time. And so eventually you can't just walk around all day and cry and feel sorry for yourself. At a certain point, it's like, it's strange with grief because at the beginning, everybody was sort of like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine what you're going through. Like, it was very somber. And I was like kind of surprised how I didn't, not that I didn't care, but I just was in shock, I guess, and I kept telling everybody the anecdote about the cartoon thing because I think that's funny, but nobody else seems to find that funny. The only person who thought that was funny was a homeless guy on Hollywood Boulevard, and that's it. And I don't even think he understood what I was saying, So anyway, it's just like with grief. At first, when it happens, people feel bad for you, and they make you lasagna, and things like that, and they say, oh, you can take off work, you can do whatever you want, and then after a certain amount of time, when it wears off for people, they sort of forget about it, and they're like, okay, it's time to move on now, right? I mean, and then if you say like, well, I'm grieving still today, then people are like, oh, they're kind of annoyed, and it's like, clock ticking, like, come on, it sort of becomes more of an inconvenience, which is worse because for me, it's like, that's when I most need the support, when it's been longer time, At first, I'm kind of in shock, and I'm getting all the overwhelming support from everybody else, then I'm like, this isn't so bad, but then after, when everybody stops caring, then that's when I feel the most sad, and that's when I need the most support, But anyway, yeah, I mean, it was a shame. It was, shit happens. I mean, that's really all there is to it. Because I remember when I was God has a plan for everyone. And this was something else that I said at the eulogy too. We don't know if maybe in like 10 or 20 years, she was going to become a child molester or something, or we have no idea. So there was some reason why this happened. Everything happens for a reason. Look at me. I'm a prime example of that. I always knew that I was going to be successful. I always knew that I was going to have 500,000 followers on YouTube, and it happened for a reason, because I'm talented and I'm handsome and I'm intelligent, So there must have been some reason that we're too small and insignificant to understand for why this tragic thing happened. Because people, when I say that, then people are like, oh, why do kids get cancer? Why do I don't know, why do squirrels get run over by cars? Things like that. And they use this great metaphor when I used to be a priest, that was God is like what was it? We are ants crawling along a tapestry. We're ants crawling along the threads of a tapestry. So we can only see in our, ant vision, we can only see the individual thread, and we're like, oh, does this lead to a cookie crumb, or something like that. We can't see the whole design of the tapestry. And a tapestry is a rug, by the way, a rug that has a really ornate design. Ornate means intricate, and intricate means it's just basically pretty, and it's complicated. So we can't see the intricate ornate design of the rug. We can only see the little thread. And that's sort of God. So this happened there, this was like she had to fall off a cliff because the pattern had to zag that way, and then it's got to zag this way, So, I mean, I was going to tell the whole story, but I guess it's kind of self-explanatory. I mean, we went to Big Sur, which is an area of California that's well known for its scenic beauty. It's basically a big road, and you drive on the road. And I had the idea to propose basically by, pulling over on a turnout, because basically the way Big Sur works is you drive along the road, and then there's turnouts. You can pull over and get out and look at the beautiful scenery. It's a big cliff that goes into the ocean, and it's beautiful. So what I did not account for was the fact that there were going to be so many fucking people. Everybody and their grandma was there because it was Valentine's Day, And I thought as a culture, we had sort of grown more nihilistic. So I didn't think Valentine's Day was as big of a deal as it used to be. But I guess I sort of was like, I wanted to plan the whole trip on Valentine's Day in an ironic way, because I was like, wouldn't it be so funny and stupid if we made fun of the way that people go on trips for Valentine's Day, and we went on a trip for Valentine's Day, as a joke, and so the whole time we were like, I can't believe that we're so in love, we're going on a trip on Valentine's Day, but it turns out it actually was really crowded. And so every time we would pull over to go to a turnout, there'd be like 5 other people, all with their giant cars parked all along the road. And so I was like trying to find a way to park, but I couldn't I thought the car was going to go off a cliff a couple of times, and I started getting really mad because I was like, these people, I think that there needs to be a way that we determine who deserves to do things the most, because I believe that if you were able to measure that metric, I would be at the top of the list for people who deserve to go to Big Sur, and all these other people, I felt the same way about when the tickets for the Odyssey in 70mm IMAX sold out. I was like, I deserve this more than everybody else, and it doesn't make any sense that I can't have it because other morons, I just think that, we as a society sort of live by these the early bird gets the worm rules, but some birds don't even like worms. So if they're first, why do they get to have a worm and I'm second and I actually like worms, but they got it there first, so they got to have a worm even though they don't like them, So anyway, we were, driving along and trying to find a turnout, but there was nothing. And I said, I'm going to have to get a little creative here. The road is very sort of treacherous, because it's on the side of a cliff, which is what makes it beautiful. But when you're trying to find a place to park, that can be a little tough, So I said, you know what? Fuck it. Because it was getting to be the point where we were going to have to turn around and go back to the hotel. So eventually I just pulled over and turned my hazards on, and I said, let's just get out real quick and take a real quick picture, you know. And I just stopped in the middle of the road, because in LA you can do that. I mean, you can't do that, but I mean, everybody does, because that's the only way that you can do anything. You know, and she was like, we can't just stop here, there's gonna be people who are, you know, backed up. And I was like, we're just gonna be real quick, because I know, because you know, it's a proposal. So a proposal is going to be good no matter what happens. You know, you could propose in an outhouse and it'll still have some emotional resonance. You know, you could propose in a porta potty. And I actually thought about doing that because I thought it would be funny, you know, another ironic thing. But I said, I don't really like the smell, you know, and I'm sensitive to smell. So I think that would be, you know, smell is very heavily tied to memory. So then actually one of the reasons why I wanted to do it was because I really hate the smell of porta potties, and I have a hard time peeing in porta potties because the smell makes me anxious, because I'm thinking I'm going to get a disease from all these people's, you know, poop that has, God knows, West Nile virus in it, you know? So I was like, well, if we propose in an outhouse, then the smell will remind me of being proposing, you know, and the engagement. And so then it'll sort of rewire my associations with the outhouse. But I didn't end up doing that, because then I was worried that it would have the opposite effect and my wife would remind me of an outhouse, you know, porta potty. You just got to be careful with the brain. You know, its connection, sometimes it's a little finicky. So we decided to do Big Sur. Well, we didn't decide to do it. I mean, I decided that I was going to propose there, which we just decided to go. So I was like, this will just be real quick. We'll just pop out of the car. You know, I already got the ring in my pocket. And it was nothing that impressive. You know, we're really not very materialistic people. Well, I'm not a materialistic person. She was not a materialistic person. I keep forgetting that, you know. You got to change the tense, you know. So the ring was nothing special, but I figured what I was going to do, I'd be like, will you marry me? And I would just kind of like, you know, move it around a lot so she couldn't look at it very hard. And then she would be swept up in the emotions of the situation and she wouldn't really register, you know. And I don't think that when you propose to somebody, you have to give them the ring. You'd sort of just like, hey, will you marry me? And then you can kind of put it in your pocket. And she's like, oh, yeah. So, you know, it was a nice moment at the beginning, you know, because I got down on one knee and, you know, I opened the box and I said, you know, will you marry me? And she was like, oh, you know, started to cry, and she started to back up, you know, because she was like, oh, I can't believe it, you know, backing up. And then she just went right over, you know. I barely even had time to register what was happening. And I thought it was, I sort of, again, I laughed at first, because it was just sort of like, wow, I can't believe that something this funny just happened to me. You know, like not funny, but like, you know, it's just crazy. You know, it's sort of outrageous. It's like absurd. You know, it's like something out of an absurdist comedy routine. You know. I'm so alone in this world. I've pushed everybody away. Just kidding. Could you imagine if I was a sad loser? Okay, that's it.